Our first lesson are the first few verses from Psalm 119. How can a young man cleanse his ways? By taking heed according to your word. With my whole heart I have sought thee. O let me not wander from your commandments. Your word I have hidden in my heart, that I might not sin against you. Blessed are you, O Lord. Teach me your statutes. With my lips I have declared all of the judgments of your mouth. I have rejoiced in the way of your testimonies as much as in all riches. I will meditate on your precepts. I will contemplate your ways. I will delight myself in your statutes. I will not forget your word. And the second lesson is from the work Arcana Celestia, and it's treating of the words when Joseph was cast into prison, and the butler and baker come. They've had dreams, and they want to know the interpretation of the dreams, and so Joseph sees their sad face and asks them what's the matter, and so they each tell him their dreams. It was good news for the butler, but not so good news for the baker. And Joseph, at the end of that story, as they're leaving, he says, remember me. Remember me. I don't belong here. I didn't do anything wrong. But as you may remember, they didn't remember. But remember, he says, these words signify receiving things of faith. The case regarding things of faith is this, that a person who receives faith continually is mindful of the Lord, even when that person is thinking or speaking about something else. When they're discharging their duties or their jobs, whether they're private or domestic or civil or social, they may not be aware, but they are mindful of the Lord because they have faith. For the remembrance of the Lord with those who are in faith is universal in all things. This may be seen by various things seen in the other world. And then the passage goes on to talk about the sphere or the atmosphere that each one of us carries around in the natural world, but also in the other world. It's evident from these spiritual spheres. The sphere displays what the love is, and the love is then manifest to everyone. Amen. Forget not all his benefits. Are there any things in this room that are good reminders of something? When you look at certain things in this room, does it remind you of something else? When you're singing that last hymn, did it remind you of another hymn? We use that hymn for Christmas tune as well. We'll look that up later. So, what do you see that could remind you of something else? What do you see that could remind you of something else? The fruit. What does that remind you of? It reminds you of the Lord. Yes? The tree of life. Wow. Wonderful. What does that remind you of? Canada. The church. So these two flags are our Canadian flag and our church flag. Do they have anything in common? Oh, Abby, you've answered all the questions. Yes, Gray? They're both red and white. And red and white, we know, stands for love and wisdom. Just so happens that they're wonderful colors for flags. So the Canadian flag has red and white. And the new church flag, those colors were chosen to represent love and wisdom, good and truth, the two things that come together on our hearts to give us true faith and true love. So the recitation has to do with remembering. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits. And the rest of that psalm talks about some of the Lord's benefits in healing us, in helping us be better people, in sustaining us and giving us strength. And we all pray for the Lord to give us those things, especially if we're not feeling too strong, or if we're sick, we want to get better. Thanksgiving is a time to stop and reflect upon or remember the things the Lord's given us. So the fruit is a great reminder of that. In the passage I read from the Arcana Celestia, the Secrets of Heaven, it talks about Joseph being forgotten. Later on, he was remembered, and in fact, it did bring him up out of the prison, and it did place him before Pharaoh. Somebody remembering. That butler said, when Pharaoh had his own dream, "Oh, now I remember. Wow, it was years ago, but now I remember there was this prisoner, a Hebrew boy, and he interpreted my dream. He'll be able probably to interpret your dream." Because he was right. He said, I was going to be returned to you, and it was the baker who had done whatever was wrong that ended up costing him his life. I remember, the butler said. Sometimes we have moments like that. Sometimes we seem to forget the Lord, then we go, oh, I remember. My life is pretty good. If you're ever feeling sad or miserable, you can sort of let all the things that are terrible kind of get your attention. Wherever you look, you kind of seem to think and remember the things that are bad. Thanksgiving is a time where we can stop and go, that's right, I remember. The Lord's brought me through so many trials and tribulations. The Lord has helped me in so many different ways. I remember. When we have a Canada flag, we can look at the flag and think, I remember how good it is to live in this country. There are people all over the world who wish they could live in a great country like Canada. I remember now. I might complain and grumble a little bit about the taxes or about the government. We have an election now coming up, and do you remember that you get to vote if you're a certain age? Do you remember to do that? And you get to have your say in how Canada is? Yeah, don't forget to vote. Remember. And we look at the new church flag and we think, wow, that reminds me of the times that I've come into the church on New Church Day or other times when you see that flag. But it also should just be a way of going, oh, this church is a wonderful blessing. We get to have ideas about the Lord, about a God who doesn't want to hurt us, about a loving, divine human God who wants to give us all blessings and who wants everyone to come into heaven. You can look at that and go, I remember. You can think about also that the Lord remembers each one of us. Nobody is forgotten. Nobody. You might think, well, I'm not that important. I'm too young, or I'm too old, or I haven't done anything that great in my life, or, I did some things that were pretty bad, or I did some things that were really good. The Lord remembers every one of us and all the things that we've done. And that's why that psalm talks about trying to remember the Lord's statutes and trying to remember the Lord's commandments. Have them hidden away in our hearts, but also be thankful and not forget them. So Thanksgiving Day is a day of remembering to be thankful to the Lord. It's a day where we stop, we put on a national holiday to say, I'm going to remember to thank the Lord, to thank the people around me, to be grateful for the fruits that we have, to be grateful for the country that we have, the church that we have, and especially the divine gift of the Word that can be present with us right in our hearts. The Lord is not far away that we can't be close to Him, but is right close to us. Remember. Amen.